Okay, so let's create a scrolling background. We add a scrolling background component, which can be found from here, eBal Studio scrolling background. And this is the main component you'll need to create your background. And by the way, you can create multiple scrolling backgrounds inside your level. Now, the important thing for a scrolling background is referencing your own camera. Why? Because a camera over here, if it's perspective or orthographic, will make a difference to how your scrolling background looks like. Usually your background will start with something like this, the scene background. Let's keep it this way and then I'll change. So we have a scrolling background. I reference the camera. If the background is like this, the scrolling background will be displayed one way. If like this, another, perspective, orthographic, and this value makes a difference. And always zero out your camera. So 0, 0, and this value is the depth. No worries, we'll just see how it looks like. I'll create a background layer, and that layer will have a sequence. It can have multiple sequences, background sequence. So you have a background sequence, the basic unit of your background that will go inside the layer, and this layer will be plugged in here, and that's it. Okay, so let's just name this one sequence 1, L1, and you can choose prefabs or sprites. The prefabs, you just keep them at their ordinary rotation. Let me show you. For example, just keep your backgrounds, all of them like this, in this orientation. Even if you are making a 2D game, it will automatically rotate them. So I'll just reference the sprites. So I'm adding a couple of sprites. Let me add here 1, 2, and I changed the speed, and let's plug it in to, here's the sequence, almost ready. It has speed. Don't forget to keep it at 0, and that's it. So we have sequence, and let's plug in this one. Now we are ready. If you create a preview background, you see you have your background like this. If you have a different type of camera, let's make a almost 3D camera like this, and let's also put it at 0. And so this value I input here is almost the depth, and create preview background, and you see it adapts automatically. And let's change the depth ratio. If you notice how it changes, let's keep it at 0 because it's the main layer, and we'll explain also something about the scale. Hit play. Here, if you notice, it's luckily it's almost matching. Let's change. So yeah, if you see, the background is not matching the camera completely or filling it. You have two ways to change this. You can go into the layer, is scaling background to match camera. You see the background will automatically match the camera. But I suspect most people would not want to change the scale of their main background. Maybe they'd like to fit it to their game, keep it at default scale. So instead, I'll deactivate this one. I'll add a handy script called view transformer, which you can get from here. Game event, view transformer. And if I just add a view transformer without anything, it won't change. But if it's changed the aspect, which I'll explain now. If I plug in the scrolling background over here, now the camera will match the background and the aspect. I'll just keep it as using device aspect and explain it. So so it fits. And you have here with the view transformer this effect, which is you can set your own aspect ratio. So now it's 0.6. When you do that, it will change the viewport rectangle to fit your aspect ratio that you put over here. Let's make it automatically. And also you have other options like scaling the view. Let's put it in the corner here. Some handy options. And you have a marginal camera, which is another camera which can be put referenced over here, and it will be viewed on the side of the camera. You can see this one in the tech demo, which you can open on your own. Okay, so now we have, just to recap very quickly, you have a scrolling background component. Inside that component, we reference the camera. The camera is important because it defines if it's in the XY plane or XZ plane, and its depth value, and whether it's perspective or orthographic. So, and you plug in a background layer and you input a sequence inside of it. But let's see how you can make multiple sequences. Let's put another 2 sequences. So let's change the images. And so let's make this one a little bit slower, and let's make this one a little bit quicker, and I'll explain. Now if you hit create preview, nothing changed because I didn't plug them in. It's very easy to forget this one. Just make sure if you create any sequences, any layers, just to plug the sequences inside the layers and the layers inside the backgrounds. So it's sequence inside the layer and that layer inside over here. Let's create preview background, and you can see. Let's hit play. And it goes faster, but I feel maybe the second sequence is too slow, just because I need to demonstrate something. Let's make this one here 5, and let's give it a transition of 1. If you see, the transition was too quick. There you go. So you see now, and then it slows down. I think that one also needs some time transition. Here, I'll give it 2 seconds. And by the way, only for the sequences, I've done this option of where you can use variable. This variable is created from Eval Studio's float variable. Let's keep it back into, and that variable can be shared across multiple sequences. Let's keep it at use constant. And I wanted to show you the game events. Now game events can be shown from here. This I have this link in the PDF and the quick guide, and you just search for this one. It just explains what the type of game events that I adopted, because I think many people are using them, so I thought it might be best to use this one to incorporate into your own game. Game event, let's make it event 1. And yeah, these events can be raised inside your script easily. You can just reference them. Let me create a script here. You just add my namespace. That's it. This is how you can raise a game event inside your scripts. And there are also multiple instances that these events can be raised easily from my own scripts. But let's just put this one. And to make sure that I added a debug. Okay, here this one is raised. Okay, so let's reference this game event over here. So unless this event is raised, this one will keep looping. Let me hit play. So you see, because the event is not raised, it will loop again, and it will keep looping until it's raised. Now inside the editor, I put this handy button here which will raise it, but I don't want to use it. I'll use space instead. So the event was raised. Now it moves on to the sequence. Because the event was raised, now it will continue. It will continue without looping. Okay, so what else to explain? Let me open up the sequence. Okay, so now we have seen what the standard break loop event does. Let's move this one into the break loop now, and I'll put it over here. And instead of hitting space, I'm just going to put the raise button over here so that you can see more clearly when it's raised. So let's raise it now. You see, it moved instantly to the, without waiting to complete the event. So this one will wait until the event is completed. This one will move it instantly. And this one has a useful trick you can do. Let's put this one at 0. And if you noticed, I changed the speed transition into 6. Just to make it slower into stopping. So now it will stop, and it will be stuck until I raise the event. It will instantly move into the next event. So let's stop this one. Let's clean it out. And what about the completion event? Let's put this one at the first sequence, and let's refresh this one. So once this sequence is completed, it will raise this event. But if it was raised, we wouldn't know about it because it's not doing anything now. Let's make a game event listener, which you can add it to any object or anything or any function you have. And I'm going to add a game event listener, and I'm going to plug in this event, and we can choose any function for it to do it. Let's go to my script again, and this time I'm going to change this one. So this is just a quick function, do something. Instead, let's say event raised. So this way we should know when an event is raised. I'm going to add an action and choose my script, do something. And I'll hit play. This do something should be once the event 1 is raised, and it was raised. And additionally, you can use these events in another thing, which I'll show you now. For now, let me remove it. So we have explained somewhat this layer. You have also different options for the completion, for loop all sequences, loop final sequence, stop, finish. Let me show you the finish one. This one now is stuck because there is nothing to move it forward. There you go. So it's moved, and after it finishes, come on, one more. You'll see all the backgrounds finished. That was because we picked the finish on sequence end finish. We can stop, or we can loop all sequences, or loop final. I'm just going to keep loop all sequences. You've seen the depth. This would do scale, position offset for the layer. And this one is important, the finding size method. So if you noticed, we have from first background. Now in sprites it's not an issue, but for prefabs, let me create a new layer. I'm going to call it layer prefab. Let me create sequence prefab, and let me reference this one here. Let me change from sprites. I'm going to change into prefabs, and let me add a prefab. So if you have simple prefabs like this one, also it would not make a difference because all prefabs look the same and they all have the same bounds. Let me create, I didn't replace the layer, and the main camera is there like this, no problem. No need for this one now. So we just have a standard and the size is correctly. So if you have for layer prefab, if you have from first background, from input game object, makes no difference. But what if you have different sizes? Let me look for inside the demo. Oh, this one is good. Here. So let me create preview background. If you see, we already have some issues here. It was unable to calculate the size correctly. Let me instead use from input game object and choose this one, and then now it's correct. Now let me explain a bit what happened. So this game object over here, when it tried to calculate its size, it couldn't because it doesn't have a mesh renderer. To calculate the size, it needs a mesh renderer. So you can, when in this case, or if even if it calculated this, for example, the size of this one, it's not the correct size or position. You have a couple of options. You can use, for example, this one is a unit plane. You can use as a reference inside over here, or you can input your own setting, your own size. For example, let's say you estimate its size to be at 20, which is too big, I think. So it goes like this. Or you can just like I've shown over here, you just set from input game object, and you find the game object over here. Let me go from input game object, and you take a unit plane and you put it over here. I know it looks a little bit complicated, but there's no other way for me to do it. It needs to find the same unit size for a background, and it can either do it by finding the first background if it's suitable, or you can just input a game object which has the perfect size for your game, or you can input your own size. Okay, this is just a little point I wanted to explain. And the despawning, let's go back to the same layer we were working on. Here, the despawning threshold. Let me put it at. Let me just show you what it does. Just put it at 0, spawning and despawning. So you see, it's everything is being despawned almost without giving any offset. Let me increase the offset over here. So you see, you have more space for spawning, despawning. And instead of, I usually keep it at 0.1. And you can also override it and put your own values, which you see it's just a normal float number. And let's finally explain the ground game object. Ground game objects, the radius is put over here, and you have here how many inside how many are pooled inside over here, and these are input here. Let me save this one, and I'll just show you quickly. This one is explained in the runner demo. So just to explain the background objects. For start, these background objects are not a way to spawn your enemies or your game. This is just a handy way for you to spawn certain game objects, to link them to a background, so that when a background spawns, some objects spawn with it. These can be triggers or maybe some level elements, but they are not very handy for doing level elements. So for example, let's look at the sequences. For example, the blue is the first sequence, green second, and red, etc. So this is the first sequence. If you notice, each one of these elements correspond to the background numbers. So you have 4 backgrounds, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have here 4 elements. Every one of these background game objects will be attached to one of these backgrounds. So for example, this one here, I added an element, but it's empty. And you see here, it's empty. This one over here is also empty. This one is not empty. It has 2 game objects, and you can see how they are a little bit off center. This one 0.2, 0.41. And you can see the third element has only 1 game object, which you can see here. And this is basically explains the whole background game object thing. The second sequence has the same one element over here. Let me see this element is over here, and the third sequence and the last sequence over here. And that's when you hit play, it spawns. And let me show you. Yes. So I know this one is a little bit gimmicky, but it's better than nothing. You have it, and maybe you can be able to spawn some triggers with it or something. And these are the background game objects. They are listed over here, and this amount determines when they are spawned or despawned. For example, let me put it at 0. They are despawned almost immediately. And let's put it at 30 to show you the difference. They are spawned from very far, and they will keep going until very far. So that's the radius. And by the way, this radius is the same with the random objects layer. Okay, so let's just explain one last thing, which is a random layer. You just input here, create a random layer. And I'm going to put a sprites to make it easy, generic. Oh, and it's not over here. So these are the random sprites. I'm going to reference random layer over here. And by the way, we didn't explain another secondary layer. Let's put a let's make this one a secondary layer. You know, not perfect. Let's make this one depth ratio of this one, and instead I'll use this one because it has some empty spaces. And the secondary layers, the speed is dependent on the main layer, so it's multiplied. So I'm going to use values around 1. If you put 7, it will be 7 multiplied by the original. When I hit play, you will see how it works. You can see now we have a secondary layer, and I'm going to put a random layer all at once. Spawning, it spawn it infinitely. It can spawn a set number. Let's pull 5 of each. Let's make them 1 second between each. And all the settings are almost self-explanatory. Let's put one here. Let's change the and object radius is when things are spawned, despawned. I'm going to give it a 5. It's like a threshold for spawning or despawning. And let's keep it spawning at 0 and give it a speed of 5 and not connected to background. And you see you have here events for start game event and end game event. This event would start the spawning the random layer, and if you put an end event here, it will end it. This one you can see in the space demo layer, the space demo over here. Let me hit. So you see you have secondary layer and you have random layers all playing at once. And you see when the main layer speeds up, slows down, it's affected, but the random layers are not affected. Why? Because I didn't put the setting over here. I can make the speed connected. Let me make it connected first, but it's going to be too quick because it's 5 going to be multiplied. So let's make it 2 times faster. Maybe everything is too quick. And let's make this layer finish on end, so we get rid of it. And I'm going to show this is wait time affected by spawn speed. I'm going to hit here, and you have here. By the way, you have tooltips. You can anything you want to see what it does, you just put a tooltip. I'm going to. So now the wait time will be affected. Let me show you what happens. You see, when it speeds up, it spawns more. When it slows down, come on, slow, it will spawn less. And you can do interesting things here, like where's spawn position, random spawn position, and make sure that you set the correct value for object radius, which is by testing for spawning, despawning. And you can have also random depth and change the scale accordingly, random scale. Give it a random start rotation. Let's make it spin randomly. I don't know what the correct value is for speed, -10, 10. And let's connect an end event here. So when we are sick of it, we can just raise random wait time of what was the original one? 1. Let's give it 0.5, 0.7 to 3 or 2. 1.5. What the heck? Okay. Let's hit play. And that's it. I think so, yes. I think I covered everything. So you have, it's actually pretty simple. You have a scrolling background. And now it's too complicated because we have all the stuff. By the way, everything is organized. You can see it here being pulled. And let's raise an event over here to end. You see, no more random layers, random objects. So you have a scrolling background. You input the camera inside the scrolling background to get the settings to spawn. By the way, I could have done this automatically, but I've done this so that you have a modular script. And you have a main layer, secondary layer, and you have random layers. The main layer, secondary, same background layer, and you can create random from here. And inside these layers, you'll have sequences, and these sequences can be looped if you have events over here. And they can raise events when they are completed, which are created from here. And game events can be easily added into your objects, and you have something called a game event listener. Yes. And also you have global offset, I think over here for the background. This will move everything, including the camera. but once you do a preview, it doesn't move the camera and the preview button. So see, it moves everything. It doesn't move the camera, and I've done this on purpose so that you can change the camera settings manually, but when you hit play, it's all correct. Yeah, I think this is almost, I just finished this script, and this tutorial is far from perfect. Maybe I'll do it again, but it's something to get you started. If I forgot anything, you can just send at the support thread or send me an email and I'll explain it again or something. Okay, thank you for watching.